Okay, as we hop on, I wasn't sure which autoimmune disease I want to focus on this afternoon, but I'm thinking I'll go ahead and start with the thyroid question and the thyroid frustration. And I will start at the beginning. When I have a patient come in and they've been in, the thyroid cycle for probably years and decades, by the time I see somebody that's in this situation, the interesting thing is they don't have a lot of real strong history as far as the doctors that are involved in what they ask. So as an example, first thing we'll ask is, when was the last time you felt good? When was the last time you didn't feel like you had hypothyroidism? When was that change? And of course, when were you diagnosed with hypothyroid? So first thing is really, when were you diagnosed and when was the last time you felt like you didn't even have hypothyroid? I don't think that's focused on enough, and it's a huge help to understand when that thyroid problem started. If you don't ask that question, you're missing out on a lot of information that might lead you in the right direction for the support and healing that you need. And the reason I say that is I just watched a doctor dismiss a bunch of patients on a live, some kind of medical doctor, and they were saying that literally stress and trauma and things that happen in your life have no bearing on the thyroid and its health, and let alone the nervous system and the hormones that are attached to all of that. So it was a very poignant moment when the people that are on there are being told that, you just have low thyroid, that's all we need to worry about, keep treating TSH numbers and try to get those down. And you can literally guess that half those people in that audience had steam coming out of their ears because they know that if they've been told they were hypothyroid, as an example, and that all they need is extra T4, levothyroxine, or synthroid hormone, and everything should be great. And then they realize that it's not working. Maybe it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, but they realize they're being switched into a different type of treatment approach and ignored on the thyroid issues. And so that's where the history is very important. So if you haven't had this opportunity, think of it this way. Start looking at your case, and you can get the records from your doctors, whoever they are, and look at what they ask you. When were you diagnosed? How long did it take you to get the diagnosis before, between the time you felt good and didn't feel good, or you suspected you had thyroid issues and finally got the diagnosis? Because that can be a decade. Your TSH might look fine for years, even though you're subclinical hypothyroid, or just presenting with all the symptoms, but all the quote unquote normal TSH numbers. And that's really all they look at is TSH most of the time. So you'll be more or less gaslit because TSH is quote unquote the standard of care. If standard of care shows that you're 3.4, 4 is fine, you're not going to get any answers until you finally creep past that number. And then the next question should be, as you were diagnosed with hypothyroid, were you also or additionally checked for Hashimoto's disease? Now the reason for this is it's known, it's not a secret. Most doctors that have anything to do with helping patients with thyroid issues will assume that you have Hashimoto's. This is not a secret. 80 or 90% of the people out there that have Hashimoto or hypothyroid have Hashimoto's. So when you start realizing that you need that information as well, and quite often it's bypassed. They don't really care. In fact, they won't test it because they just assume you have it. And the craziest part of this is the assumption is also that levothyroxine somehow is quote unquote treating your Hashimoto's in conjunction with low thyroid. And they're totally different problems. So let's see, 10 people on here. How many of you have been in a situation where you're hypothyroid, but you've asked for the Hashimoto's testing and they just said, it's probably there, don't worry about it. That's why you're taking Levo. How many of you have been through that on the current live? Oh my God, we only have 7 people on here. So 7 people, nobody on here has had that done. Well, great. All right, 9 people. So out of 9 people, how many of you are hypothyroid? Of you are hypothyroid? Nine people, no one's hypothyroid? Okay, Naples, Nancy. Was the Hashimoto's test run when you were first diagnosed? So did you have Hashimoto's testing at some point, even after the diagnosis of hypothyroid? Nobody? Man, brutal audience. So if you're on here at the moment, are you hypothyroid? Just do a thumbs up emoji. Thumbs up emoji if you're actually hypothyroid. Nobody. This is awesome. Good times. So I got 18 people on here. Nobody's hypothyroid. Carrie, I'm lower thyroid, but over the COVID crisis, I got to 98 pounds in weight. So are you being checked for Graves? Or there's something else also going on there? So I'm not sure if I understand the sentence. Are you saying you only weigh 98 pounds, or did you lose 98 pounds? So Nikki, if you don't mind, play along. Did you have to wait to get the hypothyroid Hashimoto's, the Hashimoto's testing, or did they just run it for you right out the gate? That's ultimately what I'm asking is, did you get the hypothyroid testing? They said, hey, you have low thyroid, boom. You get the levothyroxine Synthroid. Next step, did you actually have to push for the testing? I would say maybe 1 out of 5 might get the testing with it. Quite often it's because the patient's very well aware of the potential for Hashimoto's and they get the testing. So they kind of put the pressure on the doc, which is good. You should always advocate for yourself. But let's see who else we got here. Tina, hypothyroid, just partial lobectomy in June. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Hopefully everything's going well. Thanks for the gifts, by the way. So Nikki, hopefully Nikki pops back up on here and puts her experience in. But for the 30 people that are on here, 1, how long did it take between feeling like hell and getting a hypothyroid diagnosis? So put down just 1 year, 5 years, 3 months. So you noticed a change, you started gaining weight, you started seeing appearances and changes in your face. Whoa. You gotta go back up here. Hey, Tammy. Tammy is awesome. Ended up with TSH of 70. Wow, Tina. What was the other hormones looking like, T4 and T3, if they ran them? Zoe, people said after levothyroxine, this is a very good statement. After taking levothyroxine, she was told she'd lose weight, and I can't seem to, I think that means shift it, and you're hypothyroid. Are you also Hashis? It's got a fair amount of people on here, but are you hypo and also got the testing for Hashis? Carrie, nothing else. I don't understand. 9 pounds when I got tested for thyroid, but they gave me 120 milligrams of levo. So Carrie's saying there's nothing else that's been tested. So this is the key to the whole situation. If you need thyroid hormone, your body doesn't make enough T4, that's one thing. That's just hypothyroid, primary hypothyroid. But if you have an immune system that's attacking that thyroid, what's going to happen to the thyroid over time as it gets basically destroyed by the immune system thinking that it's an invader? The immune system attacks things that it thinks it has to contain and or kill and remove. So what happens over time to your thyroid gland if you're dealing with Hashimoto's? Any guesses? What's going to happen month to month, year to year with Hashimoto's? The attack on your thyroid gland or your joints. Doesn't really matter, whatever autoimmune is. Ooh, Nikki just laid it out right there. That's the answer. She was diagnosed so Graves, 25 years ago, and was given RAI and then put on Levo since then. So she answered it right there. She's got Graves, she's hyperthyroid, which is dangerous, and then she gets treated for that, and then they give her Levo. So if you don't get treated, so I've had many patients that were told they had Graves and they just had it, basically they kept an eye on it because they didn't feel it was bad enough to treat. And then after 5 or 10 years, they start feeling really sluggish. Everything, kind of normalizes as far as Graves goes. But then they realize that their thyroid glands stop producing because it's full of scar tissue. It's basically become a war zone that's just barren. So, you think of a field that's been bombed and kind of destroyed in a war, it's all barren. And that's what happens. And so you can have both Graves and Hashimoto's. You can have hypo and hyper at the same time. And some of you will definitely experience the symptoms of a Graves situation: heart palpitations, anxiety, maybe sudden weight loss, and then you gain it back. You can have all of the above. Autoimmune doesn't really discriminate. Autoimmune is the process of the immune system going after tissues that it sees as inflamed, or currently maybe it's infected. Like you think of your gut. Is there a connection between your hypothyroid and Hashimoto's and maybe pernicious anemia? Is there a connection between your gut, once again, and Crohn's and celiac? Absolutely. It's a really good research project. If you have family members and friends that you're noticing they're getting worse over time and they need help, but they're being told, well, the antibodies aren't high enough yet. You shouldn't have those antibodies. If you think about it, there should be no antibodies at any level to certain tissues in the body, any tissues in the body. But they'll tell you differently. Carrie, what is this? I have a thyroid disorder? I don't know. I don't know your case, Carrie. I would be completely speculating and not really doing you any good without having a full history, testing. We definitely have to have something a little more in depth than just a few sentences on TikTok. But it certainly could be that. You live in the UK, so it's crap. You get crap healthcare there. The other thing that I would be considering would be the Graves component. It could also be changes in diabetic potential there. I've had patients that were carrying weight for years and then suddenly lost all the weight, and they go from type 2 to type 1 diabetes. It could be cortisol issues. It could be hormonal issues. There's a lot of things. And then there's much more nefarious and important things to discuss there with regard to cancer. So, typically speaking, that's not going to be the case. But I would highly recommend that you get somebody looking at that level of weight loss. I think you said 98 pounds. So I don't know if you weighed 250 before that. But we need to rule out things that are behind the scenes that can definitely cause issues, or even, premature passing because it's not been caught. And I would assume someone has. Somebody's monitoring what's going on there. Naples Nancy, I have celiac for the last 10 years. So Naples Nancy, what came first? Hypothyroid or the celiac? Did you have any idea that those are connected? Those autoimmune diseases tend to run together. More on the other side, celiac patients tend to become hypothyroid, and there's some really important things about that you can actually help fix and improve upon on your own, not with any medications or anything like that. If you are dealing with celiac, and you have digestion and absorption, that right there is going to impair thyroid function, because you're not getting the cofactors, the things that the body has to have to make T4 hormone into T3 hormone. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, but there's also a lot of healing that can be had without, 3, 4, 5 extra medications in your system that you weren't born without. Always think back, with regards to medication, were you born with too little of any medication outside of things like, let's say, diabetes, type 1 diabetic, you're a little kid and boom, your pancreas is just not making insulin. That's different. And even hypothyroid patients, that are born with an inability to produce thyroid hormone. Outside of those instances, were you born without enough aspirin? Were you born without enough statins? Were you born without enough blood pressure medication? Think about it from a different perspective. What happened in your physiology that things started kind of backing up and maybe even going backwards, like plumbing in a house? When do things start kind of building up on you and not allowing you to have a normal metabolism, not having normal ability to lose weight with exercise, or even just maintaining weight? Outside of, obvious things like people that are, addicted to fast food and Coke. Outside of that, what person are you? What category do you fit in? And if you know that something's wrong, but there's also something being missed, this is what you need to do. The first step is getting much more thorough testing. Your testing that you're getting, typically speaking, almost always, is very inadequate. And we can always use TSH and T4 as an example. TSH is a very poor indicator of thyroid health. If it goes really high, that's clearly a problem. But if you're seeing it kind of go from, let's say, 10 to 4 to 7 to 3, what does that mean? And does that mean that they need to chase an old test, with a new thyroid dosage? That's not good. Think about it this way. It's dynamic, and I've had many patients like that where they'll have a 1, and then it jumps up to 4.5, and then it goes back to 2, and then it goes up as high as 10. And the doctors will try to chase that tail like a dog going crazy, just running in circles. And they'll try to accommodate the changes in TSH with a new dosage strategy. Do a thumbs up if that does not make sense to you. Is that chasing something that is missing the point? Almost got put on cholesterol meds because I was taking level without enough water, so absorption was an issue. Well, that's a great point, Nikki. So one other medication that tends to come down the line is going to be something with cholesterol recommendations, and they won't tell the patient, hey, your thyroid hormone is essential to your liver to help synthesize and break down cholesterol. They don't tell you that. They'll just say, your cholesterol is going up, here's a med. If I'm wrong, tell me. Tell me that your doctor gave you an option to figure out, one, maybe you need more water with your med and absorption, or 2, they just bypass it and they say, hey, your blood pressure kind of went up here. Your thyroid issues are what they are. By the way, your blood sugar issues are going up, and we're going to start talking about putting you on lisinopril, and potentially we're going to even look at cholesterol medications. Your endo caught it? So, Nikki, the other side of this is, did the endo also run the Hashimoto's testing? I need to know, can you get pregnant if you have autoimmune condition and have thyroid meds? Yeah, for sure. I think there's 2 or 3 questions packed into one there, though. There are potential problems with getting pregnant with inadequate thyroid hormone. And not to mention that along with those thyroid hormones being off kilter or not ideal, then we also see some problems with progesterone. We could potentially be seeing issues with serotonin and dopamine. So other factors that might be playing in that why you wouldn't be able to get pregnant. And of course, estrogen. So, yeah, I mean, I've certainly been around people that have had a hard time and had patients that couldn't get pregnant until thyroid hormone was stabilized. And so I'm not sure if you're in that boat or not. Can't speak to it, but I can just tell you about patient experiences I've had. What could cause microvascular disease in your feet? Vascular doctor thinks it's autoimmune. Sounds like autoimmune. This is actually CT. That's a really good question. There is a large body of evidence that's starting to come up that's suggesting that cardiovascular disease itself is autoimmune by nature. It's not cardiovascular disease. For the 30 people that are on here, what's the first thing that pops in your head? What has conventional wisdom taught you about cardiovascular disease? What's the first thing that you think of? Put it in the comments. Okay, heart. But what? Okay, high blood pressure. So kind of more toward those lines. But cardiovascular disease, instead of heart or the vessels, what's the cause of the cardiovascular disease, or what do you guys see as the bad guy that's involved with cardiovascular disease? Let me rephrase that. Sorry about that. Okay, obesity, yeah. Atherosclerosis, so cholesterol and plaquing. What else? Just repeat it. If it's already been in there, go ahead and repeat what you think of with cardiovascular disease. Genetics, yeah. Genetics is an overplayed card in healthcare. It's a really great scapegoat. So I am Gen X2, cholesterol, bad diet. So back to cholesterol, let's say, maybe diabetes, right? Would it shock you to find that the emphasis is now being placed on immune system dysfunction and cardiovascular disease? So as these things are all symptoms, so blood pressure is a symptom, atherosclerosis is a symptom, obesity is a symptom, and behind all of that is an immune system dysregulation. Kind of makes sense. As an example, how do the immune system cells travel? How do they get from point A to point B? So how do those immune system cells travel and get from point of origin to tissues and areas of concern? No? Well, kind of. I mean, it's part of it, but more like tubes. What kind of tubes? Through the bloodstream, right? They're white blood cells, immune system cells. So they're going through that bloodstream. Now, they have a job to do, and they have a location in mind. The nervous system's orchestrating this as well. So now you step into a different direction. You realize if there's enough immune system dysfunction going on with things like poor diet, glyphosate, so, pesticides, medications, poor gut health, leaky gut syndrome, the leaking of lipopolysaccharides into the bloodstream, which are like adding fuel into the fire. That will stimulate your entire immune system response. And the cardiovascular system is the network in which this all happens in. What is the likelihood that the immune system might have some issue as it travels along into different areas of the body? Like if you have rheumatoid or you have Parkinson's or MS, it still has to get there, and at the same time it's going through this circulation, and the immune system may have issues with different areas of that. And so that's another consideration. So instead of cardiovascular disease just being about obesity and blood pressure and cholesterol, it actually has a massive immune system component to it, which is driven by what's called inflammatory agents or cytokines and prostaglandins, essentially. Things like NF-kappa B, TNF alpha. So pretty commonly spoken about inflammation pathways. Nikki, can childhood viruses be a root cause? Yeah, absolutely. But another thing that's interesting about that is it's not so much the specific virus. It's more about the ability of the immune system to keep viruses, bacteria, fungi, mold, all at bay. So instead of thinking like you have an invader that got you at one point, it really has a lot more to do with the buoyancy or the constitution of the immune system itself and being able to maintain that to your best ability. And everyone's a little different. Everyone has a little bit different challenges in their physiology. And the importance here is understanding yours specifically, like not relying on a diagnosis and not really even relying on the idea that, I had scarlet fever or I have HSV, I have HPV, I have EBV, right? What's more important, the soil or the organism that might come into the soil? The soil is going to allow whatever is necessary either to get rid of the poison and destruction. Like when you have a garden that's not taken care of, it's not nourished, it's not revitalized, well, it becomes something that is worthless and you can't grow anything in it. So the soil being your body, it's a pretty old concept. Germ theory kind of changed all that, and it was wrong. It's still wrong, and I'll never say that the germ theory is even really we're talking about. The only thing that matters is how do you build your body to the point at which it's so capable and it has the ability to maintain itself that it doesn't matter what organism comes into it and leaves it, whatever. My daughter came home one day with kissing disease. Since then, my body has wreaked havoc or racked havoc. What will support pregnancy if you have hypothyroid? Sam B, I don't know if you're still on here or not. I'm not sure what you're asking me. What's going to help make you pregnant? I don't have any idea what you're referring to. Can hypothyroidism cause high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and vitamin D deficiency? Wow, that's quite a group of potential considerations around it. So hypothyroid by itself doesn't do any of those things. In fact, a lot of my patients are low blood pressure that are hypothyroid. And a lot of that has to do with nervous system issues, cortisol issues, but they can have high blood pressure. And a lot of the patients that do also have blood sugar issues and diabetes. So it's a little bit different perspective on what's causing that to go up, and kidney health, essentially, kidney and adrenal health. And then the high cholesterol absolutely is driven by hypothyroidism, because the thyroid hormone is what helps the liver with the task of breaking down and synthesizing cholesterol and utilizing it, doing what it needs to with it. And vitamin D as another possibility, if it's Hashimoto's or any other autoimmune that's along for the ride with the hypothyroidism, vitamin D levels tend to be lower. Why is that? So think of it this way. If you have autoimmune disease, what does that mean your immune system is doing day to day? Typically, what does that mean? What is the immune system up to day to day if you have autoimmune? It's a good question. It's fighting. Candace nailed it. You got it. Ed 2020. It's fighting. It's overworking, essentially. I hate to say that it's doing anything wrong, because I really don't think that the body makes too many mistakes. Otherwise, to me, it seems that we would all just flop over. And medicine the medicine comes in and it saves the day with emergency situations, or it patches holes in the road, but that's about it. It patches symptoms. It patches numbers, so to speak. Cholesterol numbers go down when you take a statin. It's not taking care of the core mechanism behind those problems. So vitamin D3, being that hormone that it is that helps with your sex hormones and your immune system and your bones, everything you can think of is tied back into some level of vitamin D hormone. And if the immune system's overworking, it's overvigilant, it's destroying tissues that are inflamed and sick and worn thin, vitamin D3 tends to come down. Autoimmune patients tend to see that problem. How many of you are on vitamin D3 at the moment, and how many units? Actually, let me rephrase that. It's only 30 people on here, 25. How many of you are autoimmune and have low vitamin D? Let me rephrase that. Candace, I see, went to the rheumatologist this week and she said, those words that hurt so bad, no cure, nothing. No cure, nothing. Okay. We've got to change the perspective here. And in their world, that's the absolute. There's no cure. You have autoimmune. Which one do you have, Candace? I didn't see. I got to back up here. Heads, okay. So, heads itself, there are a little bit stronger considerations with it, Ehlers-Danlos. So you have to consider that there are other down the road issues because of the genetic component to this. And some of it has to do with mortality, in all honesty. Do you know that? How many do you have? So Nikki's 5,000 D3, K2. Okay, true or false? 5,000 is considered a normal dose, a normal health and safe dose for most adults. True or false? 5,000 IUs is considered a normal, healthy dose for most adults. Not all, but most. True or false? Keep going. Who else wants to take a stab at this? No cheating. Nikki says 2,000. Angie says 10,000 a day. Okay. Natalie says no. So false, 5,000 is not normal. Ed 2020 says probably too low. Interesting, Ed. Ed, I think you're autoimmune, right? Well, here's the deal. It is a normal dose and safe dose for most adults. Not all, but most. 5,000 IUs per day. Yeah, but Rory, the bottle says the bare minimum of what you should have. Guess what the normal is for most children above the age of 3? Any guesses? Oh, Ed, you're Hashimoto's and a male, I think, right? The males don't get near as much attention because it favors women 9-1. So 9 women, for every 9 women, there's 1 male that has Hashimoto's. So the number, female, okay. Never mind then. But the number for autoimmune patients, so knowing what I just told you, if you're taking 5,000 IUs, which is considered healthy, pretty adequate and normal in the research, not your doctors. Your doctors don't know this. They don't do anything with nutrition for the most part. Most of them will put you on 2,000, which is a child's dose for the most part. The best way to know is just check your own levels. We just check your levels, make sure we're on point. But it's very rare where I see someone at 5,000 IUs and they're way over the top. It's almost, I don't think I could say that I know anyone that's over the top with that. And children at 2,000. Of course, check with your doctors. I'm not your doctor. So, take in consideration then, if you're autoimmune, what do you think the dose should be? What do you think my average patient who's autoimmune, Hashimoto's, let's say, the two that tend to run together for most of my autoimmune are Hashimoto's, lupus, and celiac. Those 3 kind of run together, and rheumatoid. Guess what that dose is for most of them? Yeah. FM, I think you mean functional medicine suggested 5. Yep, so 5,000 as your normal. So if you're healthy, you have no issues, typically 5,000 is more than safe. Yeah. But functional medicine people, or patients rather, are typically not dealing with a lot of normality or healthiness at first. So take a guess what it should be per day, per my experience in my patients in my clinic. Guess the autoimmune patient dose that is typical in my blood work, based on blood work, by the way, not just guessing. It's not 50,000 a week. Mary hit it, 10,000 a day, pretty average, and as high as 20,000. So yep, 10,000. Now I'm not saying that's what you should take by a long shot. I got a bunch of comments here I have to approve. So I'm not saying you need that. What I'm saying is my average patient is somewhere between, I think the lowest I had this last couple of weeks was 6. Was it 6? No, that's not right. That was their iron. God, I think it was like single digits. It was like 9 or 10. It was crazy. Certainly low. Now keep in mind, the labs say below 30, somewhere in there, which is crap. You don't want it any lower than 60. Do a thumbs up if you did not know that you want your vitamin D3 testing, what's in your body, to be any lower than 60. Do a thumbs up if you did not realize that. How much K? I don't remember what's on the K side of things. It's usually ratioed though. It's in the ratio, Rory. Kind of formulated for you. Oh, Angie. So her neurologist has her on 10,000 a day. What were your levels at, and what autoimmune are you dealing with? Yeah, I forget the ratio. I don't remember the K2 component. I should know that. I've forgotten it. I don't remember. Hello. Hello from Brazil. I don't speak Portuguese, unfortunately. 100 micrograms, Nikki? Nice. For some reason I was thinking it was 500. Oh, Miriam, good to see you. Oh, you have MS and levels cover about normal, but they dip occasionally. Like in the 60 range? Do you know where that's sitting? And how's that going? I hope everything's going as well as you could pray for and hope for. And just out of curiosity, Angie, have you ever explored the parasitic component or potential for MS? It's not a real favored subject amongst the general medical community, but you will find some really interesting information. I have a post on that. Oh, you know what? I don't. They took it down. I did a 15-second post on a really interesting study that came out of Colorado. And it does just say that the nervous system had certain things in it, and these patients were all handpicked because they were donated to the MS Society. So the patients said, hey, I want you to research my body and brain. And this particular doc had an idea, and he decided to use a exceptional piece of equipment to analyze brain samples and tissues from 10 different patients over a 30-year span. So let's just say that he took a couple of people every decade, or I guess 5 years, whatever that would work out to. And he analyzed every one of these people, and they all had the same type of organism in their brain that hadn't been seen at that point or noticed because of the equipment. The equipment he had and bought himself was a little bit more in depth. So pretty interesting little group of information there. But yeah, they actually took that off my page. I got a violation warning for that. Somebody's hammering the likes. Who's that? I appreciate it. Keeps the momentum going, keeps the gas going. Fabby? I think that's Fabby doing that. Fabi or Fabia? Or Maria? So, Fabby, Maria, thank you. Nikki, Rory as usual. Miriam's usually up there. Miriam, is that a new avatar picture? Looks good. Ed 2020, Angie, Natalie, Danny from Brazil, I think. Karen, Marie, Coach CJ, Sheila Cole, Jude, Chris Casey, Bristy, AJ, Hamster, Myra, Sylvia. Oh, cool. Started playing pickleball this summer. Excellent. So it sounds like things are improving. Started taking supplements a week ago. Achiness has gone away. Can they work that quickly? I wouldn't say. Let me change your perspective. I want to really hit this home. The supplements are supporting an improvement in something, right? So they're not really the cure. There is no such thing. But what they're doing is they're supporting some mechanism of inflammation. Maybe they're supporting mitochondrial function, so more energy production. Maybe they're supporting better hormone receptors, receptor site availability. maybe it's all the above. So I don't know what you're taking, but I have had patients that are rheumatoid patients that pretty much as soon as they started taking high dose fish oil, they started seeing improvements in their joints, as an example. What's another one? Turmeric is decent with RA patients anyway. A lot of patients will notice once they do some level of restriction in their diet, especially rheumatoid patients, but any patients with pain, the nightshade family and sugars, once those are removed from the diet altogether, their pain levels improve within a few days to weeks. So there's a combination of factors that are possible there, Karen. I just don't know your case. But those are things that I witness with my patients. Weight loss tends to come on. Some patients it's 5 to 10 pounds in a month without even trying, and others it's 3 months before they lose 5 pounds. It just depends on what's going on. Angie, no tomatoes. Yep, you nailed that. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like you think about all the nightshades and their impact on the gut lining, permeability of the gut or leaky gut syndrome. It's just like, oh man. So Natalie Moon, lupus, 49-year-old. Okay, in the hospital for 34. So it was attacking the heart and brain meninges. I'm not understanding that sentence there. I think you're saying. I'm not understanding. I think you're saying you've been in the hospital for 15 years. I apologize. I wish I was interpreting that better. But very importantly, what you just said there, Natalie, is something that I think the autoimmune patients, anyone that's in here at the moment, should know about. I don't always run this test, but for those, 34 days, got it, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. I was a little shocked there for a second. I was like, oh my God, you poor thing. I certainly have met people like that. But going back to what you had said there, the autoimmune complex, okay, the ability of inflammation to drive the body to attack different areas of the body, no one really knows why that is. No one knows why one person will get MS, another one will get lupus like Natalie, another person will just have celiac and Crohn's or Hashimoto's. And then you have the people who come in with 5 to 10 different diagnoses, all autoimmune. And then we run another test. It's called a Cyrex Array 5, and we find out that there's actually heart tissue being attacked, just like Natalie's talking about here. The meninges in the brain, something called T-tubules or components of muscle tissue, basically components of bone tissue, components of gut tissue, obviously. Pernicious anemia is one of those tests. But we look actually at a ton of systems with regard to an autoimmune lens. And sometimes what that does is it gives the patient a peace of mind about why they've had so many bizarre symptoms and no one could quite put their finger on it. And it's because we can see these antibodies that are developed against every tissue you can imagine. And that's the crazy part, is a lot of doctors don't have access to that testing. It's not that they wouldn't run it, but their hands are tied sometimes. The rheumatologist specialists, this kind of hit, it made me become more empathetic with the plight of the rheumatologists, pain management people. I had a test, I did the Cyrex Array 5 with this patient. She had, at that time, I think she had at least 10 autoimmune diseases diagnosed. She had everything you can think of: lupus, MS, lichen planus, celiac. What else should she have? I can't even remember all of them. And then we ran that test, and we had like an additional 5 other antibodies, one of which was to her bone, her osteoclast. There was another one, I believe, to nervous system tissue and heart. I think those are the other 3 or 4 that were on top of what she already knew she was dealing with. And she took in her testing to the rheumatologist and showed it to him, and he was excited about it. He was like, wow, this is a great test. He was impressed by the breadth of data that was provided about what's going on with her. And he wasn't all that surprised, but he was excited that he actually had better testing than what he has access to through an insurance allowance or gatekeeping system. And she was angry. I remember I had to calm her down. She's a very feisty individual, very angry sometimes. And I had to call her out on it. Like, I remember her and her husband sitting in the office with me. And I'm very particular about who I work with. If I think that you're motivated, and I think that you have had enough and you're ready to hit the ground running as best as you can where you're at, those are the patients I love to work with. And I don't care how severe they are. Like, you know, you could have MS, you could have Hashimoto's, you could have celiac, you could have a lot of things going on. What I care about is your ability to implement the changes we're going to do or need to do. And she was one of these people. I knew she was a fighter, and she was very pushy in the interview. The new patient interview was very, let's just say that she tried to control the way it was going to flow, and I don't do that. I have a very specific way of doing things, and if you can't fit within it, it's not going to be a good match. You know, I think anyone would agree with that. Do a thumbs up if you know what I'm talking about. I don't mind spirited people. I don't mind people that are skeptical. I don't mind if they're a little bit angry about the problems that they've got and situation they're in. That doesn't bother me. It's your ability to be led and actually let go of the ropes and not have to be in control the whole time. You know, I think most people can empathize with that that sentiment. You want to work with people who you know are passionate about their lives. They're tired of being tired. They're tired of being sick. That's who I love working with, because I am very confident in the results I get and the patient's improvement. So, going back to her, I confronted her, I think it was the second appointment, and I looked her dead in the eye and I said, all right, so what I've learned about you in the last 2 hours or whatever, because we had 2 different appointments, is you're a pain in the ass. You'll say what you think, and I like that. But can you be led, and can you actually follow through with what I need you to do, or are you just going to be a pain in my ass? And her husband blew out just laughing. It was pretty cool, because, I looked at him and I said, oh, what's going on? And he goes, no one's ever called her out like that before. For sure, no doctors, ever. She comes in and she's like a freaking, bull in a china shop. And so I looked at her and I said, well, if I'm the first one to do that, are you going to follow what I need you to do? You can get pissed, you can be skeptical, you can have questions. That's not the point. Can you be leadable? So, and it worked out. It was a really good working relationship. And I would call her back into reasonability from time to time. I'd say, okay, you need to chill out. and she did that. Dudette Cadet, I want my quality of life back. Help. What's going on, Dudette? Put down what's going on there. Not everyone is ready for change. Exactly. And it's a beautiful thing when they are. And if you get to be a part of that process, it's truly one of the most inspiring and I don't know what the word is. Just it's a feeling between getting to do the job that you love to do and also providing service and helping people. It's a beautiful marriage. And I got on that because of Natalie, I think. Natalie, I think I was addressing you, and I got off on my squirrel moment there. Oh yeah, so we were talking about the Cyrex-RA testing for you, and you found out that the heart tissue and brain meninges was being attacked. And I'm assuming maybe you had the Cyrex test, Natalie. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's the test I would be using. Mom passed from ALS. I have fibro, humerus, many other issues. You're not diagnosed ALS as well, are you? I'm sorry that's quite the load, quite a bit to carry. Liberating, yeah, it is liberating. Suze Cruz, that's a good way to put it. It's liberating in a sense that, because I think you're agreeing to work with somebody on both sides. It's not like an ego thing. It's, hey, I'm going to kick your ass for about 3 to 6 months, and if you can't pull your weight, then why waste our money, your effort, my time? There's other people out there that are more sick and want more results and are willing to do what it takes. It's not really even a judgment call. It's just like, having a first grader run a sixth grade race. If your mentality's not there, you're just not there. Hashimoto's total hip replacement. Oh man, was that due to mechanical slash or biomechanical issues, or what was the hip replacement about? Jillian, anemia. Jillian, are you also thyroid? Hypothyroid? Hashis? So yeah, Natalie, you gave me a huge amount to talk about there, just because when you realize that your immune system is attacking so many different other tissues and areas of the body, and how the symptoms become very wild and sometimes very misleading. Symptoms aren't everything, but it is certainly the first thing we try to improve on with any patient. I want you to, in the first month of treatment, I want you to see some level of improvement with brain fog. That's my favorite one. And energy levels. And they tend to, brain fog and energy levels tend to run together. And then secondarily to those two, or third or tertiary result would be something around pain usually. Maybe it's some weight loss. It just depends on the patient. Deformation and severe labrum cartilage issues. Due to the again, mechanical issues like old injuries from sports, or because of, unfortunate genetic problems with the hips. Ooh, 55 pounds lost. Wow. Well done. How much more are you working on? You're going through that right now. The weight loss part? I'm glad. You deserve better. You deserve to feel better. If you're in the situation where you're realizing that you are seeing no results and no improvements, and you're not really getting answers, do a thumbs up. Do a thumbs up emoji. So you're kind of just, you're in a sit and wait type cycle, except that it's like 5 years or 10 years of the same bullshit. Because at some point you should expect more. If you're doing everything you can, truly, and you're not getting any more answers, you're not even getting more thorough testing, you're not getting tests that you've heard about on TikTok. There's a lot of doctors on here that are pissed off about people that do anything but what they do. And only, of course, they have the answers. And no one else is allowed to talk about healthcare of any kind. I don't care if it's acupuncture, I don't care if it's functional medicine, or acupuncturists that do functional medicine, or chiropractors that do physical therapy, or, there's all these people that want to compartmentalize your health and tell you can always only see these certain experts. And I'm not saying, certainly within reason, you go to quote unquote the authorities and you get your opinions on what's going on from them. But then when they tell you there's nothing else we can do, what are you left with? Well, you have to figure out if there's somebody talking about something you've never heard about, makes sense at least, and you can research a little bit and check against it. And then you find out that they're not lying. Like when I talk about Hashimoto's being your number one concern because it can lead to other autoimmune diseases, hypothyroid is definitely below the chain. I'm not saying you ignore it, but I'm saying that if Hashimoto's is on your list along with MS, obviously, that's very obvious, but celiac or any other rheumatoid, you can have 10 of those problems and no one told you about it, let alone that you can stop the inflammation, decrease the immune system overfunction, the overvigilance. It's doing what it's supposed to, believe it or not. It's being driven by other factors. That's the crazy part about autoimmune. Self-immunity is being driven by other problems. So it's not really even, I hate to say this because it's so much against the conventional model and wisdom, but the immune system is doing exactly what it was meant to. It's not doing things in the wrong sense. It's just doing things that it has to accommodate, like poor eating and infections and medications, things that actually can cause problems. It's like, think about it this way. If you take medications, those can actually drive ANA testing up. So anti-nuclear antibodies. Now, there is a thing called medication-induced autoimmunity. Do a thumbs up if you did not know that. Do a thumbs up if you did not know there was such a thing as medication-induced autoimmunity. Bob didn't know. Tatiana, I think that's Dudette. Let's see who else. Jordan didn't know. I don't know what you're doing there. Dudette did know. Yeah, it is. It is possible. What's even more interesting, Dudette, is the potential for certain treatments. What's even more interesting, Dudette, is the potential for certain treatments. I can't, otherwise I'm booted. So frustrating. We lost our Facebook account, and we have no idea why. I don't know if any of you have had this issue, but we had about 53,000 followers on there, and fair size, not huge. But we also got some information. My wife handles all these accounts. She sees all the TikTok stuff. She's the one that, if you guys reach out to us for appointments or needing to set up testing and whatnot, then she's the one that handles testing and whatnot, and she's the one that handles those. We saw the reasoning behind this, and I'm sure you've seen someone on TikTok mention this. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It's crazy. So let's just say the allegations that are thrown at you, and at first I was like, what is going on? And then I saw 16-year-old, 20-year-old females who are being accused of this thing, the thing you should never even, it's just nightmarish. I mean, all kinds of people losing their accounts on Facebook. And what's interesting, it's all on the precipice of giving your ID away to these companies to use them. And I didn't even know this, but I think they had like a data breach for Meta, and there was billions of people's information exposed. Do a heart if you know what I'm talking about. A heart emoji. Do a heart emoji if you know what I'm talking about. The data breach that happened for Meta, I think in June. And then they want, Spotify and all these jackasses want us to give our licenses to them, I'm like, this is nuts. So sickening. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox here. Why I got bacterial meningitis after, I don't know, Natalie, did I miss something? Nikki, I'm taking selenium to assist in T4 to T3 conversion. Eat a couple of Brazil nuts if you forget. You can overdo those Brazil nuts, but the selenium by itself isn't the only thing. Remember, your B vitamins is a big part of that. Glycine, vitamin C, glutathione, all of these things assist with the conversion of T4 to T3. So, but it's great that you're doing it. Just 200 micrograms, like I'm assuming that's what you're trying to aim for there. The problem with the Brazil nuts is research has shown that some of the nuts will have like 25 micrograms, and then some of them will have like 200, and then you're just guessing essentially. So it's a double-edged sword. I'm not trying to discourage what you're doing. I'm just saying consider that. Namaz, I think that's how you say that. How long to put Hashimoto's into remission if TPL is only 19 and you're strict and consistent? The other factors there, that's a great question, by the way. It's so low. What was the highest you were at, Namaz, by the way? Because, technically speaking, I like to see it at least below 10, and I think that's what you're aiming for. But it does come down to your sleep patterns. Your sleep is maybe a point of power here. So if you're not getting to bed and off your blue light, so your phone or TV or whatever, Namaz, do this. I would love to hear how this goes. 2 weeks straight, 100%. Don't mess around, but get to sleep by 9:30, and not have any blue light exposure. Certainly by the time the sun goes down, which here is I think 8:30 at the moment. So ideally, you would be 2 hours before the sun goes down with no blue light exposure. And I know this sounds a little crazy and out in left field, but I assure you it's not. And to me, that would be a really good resource if that's not something you've done already. Outside of that, considering, are there any current infections? Like Namaz, do you have a current blood test, like something within the last month with the CBC and differential and neutrophil and lymphocytes on that? Because then we can kind of look at what or actually all the, basophils, eosinophils, monocytes, look at all of them, and let's see what those numbers look like. Because that gives us an indication kind of potentially how things look, and the white blood cell total. Mild dysbiosis, just low good bacteria, but working on it. That's a crystal ball question, man. The hard part is knowing how to influence the so-called good ones, and just taking probiotics by themselves, or it's lackluster as far as how long it is anticipated when it should take, and sometimes it doesn't take at all, even if you're taking those right probiotics. I always completely with my patients, now this isn't a suggestion for you, but for my patients, we always go back to the baby supplements. What do you give little kiddos? Acidophilus, Bifidobacter, Lactobacillus. Keep it simple. And then if you've already done that, it sounds like maybe you have, I would even venture, if it were me, now this isn't advice, but if it were me, I actually am going to start implementing Akkermansia into mine. But I have different goals too. I don't have Hashimoto's, so at least I've checked, every time I've checked it, I don't have it. Rheumatoid, lupus, none of my antibodies are up. Prebiotics, aloe juice. Yeah, I mean, the aloe juice, apple cider vinegar, it can be a mixed bag. I do use it, but, and I think you're referring to the mother. You got to remember the acetaldehyde, that's part of when you take that in, that's a byproduct of taking it in. So use it sparingly, and then even consider backing off, unless it seems to be helping with digestion or whatever. Maybe you're doing that. Ooh, anti-thyroid globulin 46, 28 in June. Good job, Nikki. Looks like you're going in the right direction, huh? But Nikki, you're seeing a functional medicine practitioner, right? Drop their name. If you like what I've got to say and you want to work with me, shoot us an email. If you like what Nikki's saying and you want to know who she's working with, Nikki will drop her name. Oh, that's a good question. The craziest thing is you would think I would say MS, right? Or Parkinson's or something. Technically, I've never taken a case that has Parkinson's. It's too complicated, and I don't feel right about that. I'll work with them, but I'll tell them my intention isn't to help them with Parkinson's. It's just to help them with their immune system and systems on a whole. But the MS, I had 2 patients come in the same week. I love this because I couldn't believe how I was expecting them to be slower, and with regard to improvements. And by the end of 3 months, both of those cases improved. I would say by no less than a 70% improvement in all their symptoms. They were ecstatic, both of these women. She was mid-70s at the time. She might be 80 at this point, but I haven't seen her in 4 or 5 years. And then the other one was a lady in her late 30s, so maybe she's 50 now. And she had some pretty severe issues going on with regard to simple things like swelling of the face, like a full-blown orange, to dropping her foot, and nervous system issues. Obviously MS, but a foot drop is something she didn't even realize she had until someone pointed it out. And both of those cases improved. I would say they improved like a total of a B plus in their case. Like everything wasn't fixed, but it was awesome. And that was a 6-month period for both of those cases. So in a way, those particular cases were easy in the sense that they improved. And then the other ones that were hard, I would say, RA can be really easy and it can be difficult. RA is another one. Like you'll get a huge amount of change in the beginning. Like they'll have an improvement of pain, maybe like 30% within the first 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, and then it just tapers off. And then they end up going back on a small dose of methotrexate or something like that. It's actually, it has nothing to do with the disease process. It has to do with if you can figure out the mechanisms well enough in that case to improve upon it. So diagnosis, I don't think it really matters for the most part. That's a cool question, by the way. I like that question. I think is how you say that. I have celiac and Hashimoto's. Bam. And I can't give you advice, man. I can only tell you the first place I start is with food and gut support with my patients. So that, probably seems very, very obvious at this point, especially on TikTok. It's only 1,000 people talking about gut health and here, drink our product and your GERD will go away, But that's cool. I mean, as long as people are getting better and feeling better, right? But that said, the fatigue and stomach issues, first thing I'd be thinking is blood testing and potentially gut testing. Probably both of those right out the gate. Doing an elimination diet, that's my favorite way. The less processed food from a store you can eat, the better. I always laugh when people are like, well, everything's processed. They get real pedantic about it. And what I'm saying is if it's in a box, a bag, or a bottle, that's problematic. Start eating things that are, literally butchered or cultivated and harvested within the week. That's a good place to start. If you want, there's a guide up, go to the bio and we have a free guide there you can download. And there's a bigger one if you want to buy one too. So have a great day. There's a guide up, go to the bio and we have a free guide there you can download. And there's a bigger one if you want to buy one too. So have a great day.